It is your boy CH here. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up that the audio is messed up on Brett's audio track, so please bear with us on this one. We're going to get this all sorted out for the next episode. Sorry about that one. Thanks for tuning in.
Good evening, sir.
Yo, this is episode 80 of the Beef and Bitcoin podcast with your host, Brett and CH. Got a great show for you guys today. Looks like we are back above, around $6,500 for Bitcoin. We've had a lot of activity going on the last week. A ton of proposals out there to try to fix the coronavirus issue. We've got a digital dollar that was slipped into one proposal but was ultimately removed. So we definitely want to talk about that. That seems like something they definitely want to get done in the future. Also, there's been a ton of attacks on privacy recently. We've seen cell phone tracking. We've seen people being ordered shelter in place, stay at home. A lot of attacks on privacy due to coronavirus. Definitely want to touch on that. And then last but not least, the demand for dollars has just absolutely skyrocketed. And it's important to think about what that means, and a strengthening dollar to a weakening dollar. What does inflation look like? Where is it likely to be? We'll touch on that. But, dude, how have you been surviving?
I'm living. I'm alive. I went out today. I had to go into Walmart to pick up a prescription at a pharmacy, and not mine, for someone else. And yeah, it's definitely quiet. I haven't been leaving my place much, but I went out last Friday again, and it was dead in the city I'm near, just completely dead, no traffic, which is great because you just rip around, no problem, no traffic. Not frustrated anymore, but it's just eerie. It's so eerie to see. And then today I noticed all the public accesses on your beaches are closed, public areas. It's funny to see that it's stuff you and I have been talking about for over 2 months now.
Right.
It's March 30th now. I mean, we've been talking about this since mid-January. I don't know if we talked about it in the podcast till January 23rd or 20th, but you and I were pinging back and forth over text and over Twitter on this for a little bit, and it's pretty crazy to see this all come to fruition. 8 weeks ago, you asked the majority of the world's population that you think there would be a major life-changing event in the next 6-7 weeks. Nah, no way. Everything has been canceled. I mean, this is, as I was talking to you earlier, this is I don't think there would be much worse than this in terms of probably economical and financial side, unless there was a nuclear war. That's the only thing I can think that could possibly worse for the economy, because everything's shut down, literally everything.
Right.
Versus, even if there was a world war, there'd be parts of the world where they could still produce shit, and there'd be people making stuff, and there'd be jobs. Not saying it'd be good, but I guess you get what I mean.
Yeah, totally. I think we'll definitely talk about that on the last topic there, because the just demand for dollars and overall demand has taken a big hit because of this. So I think that's definitely a topic we're going to touch on, and definitely in one of the next episodes where we talk about the QE that's been going on here. But I thought this digital dollar was something definitely worth mentioning. So there was a draft bill that was proposed for emergency assistance during the coronavirus outbreak, and that included provisions for a digital dollar. And Jimmy Song actually tweeted about this, and he specifically said, "It's not a cryptocurrency. The bill's language of digital dollar wallet means legal U.S. persons are entitled to bank accounts directly at the Fed, a member bank, or a state bank, or a credit union." This ultimately didn't make it in, but I thought it was very interesting that it was even proposed in the first place. So we've gone all the way from, Bitcoin's a joke, digital money's a joke, to now we have proposals for digital wallets inside of stimulus relief bills. I mean, within just, it seems like instantly overnight how quickly things have changed. So while I'm not I'm not overly concerned about moving to a digital dollar just yet, and Lawson Baker had a great thread about all the problems that kind of come along that people face if this were to happen. And I wanted to highlight a few of those because I thought it was important. And then I'm very curious on your take about this, that he said digital dollar Fed accounts for consumers is worse than the Bank Secrecy Act. Why? Because now the Fed will have direct access to all of your financial transactions and direct control over the ledger. So goodbye Fourth Amendment, no warrants, easy seizure. what do you think about all that?
Oh, 100%. This is as draconian as it gets. And I think I might have mentioned this earlier somehow. I wanted to mention it though over voice through Skype, obviously in this case. It's the amount of and I'm not pro quarantine, pro this and that. I'm very much a freedom person. I think less government is better. I think again, a free money, a sovereign money, aka gold standard, would be better for the world in general. I pointed this out, and this was a while ago in our podcast because we're at episode 80 now. And the earlier one's talking about the correlation between the large number of wars we've seen in the 20th century versus the 18th century and prior. And I'm not saying humankind is this peaceful culture, but I'm saying in the 20th century, just on another fucking scale, I get it, population has grown, etc., but just has been funded by unlimited money by banks, unlimited credit, unlimited lines of funds that in the short term, cover everything you need, whether you're buying weapons, etc., until that money becomes, useless. When, for instance, as I've mentioned before in podcasts, the U.S. during World War One, when it was supplying, I want to say allied nations, but allied's not right, but basically supplying the Triple Entente, like Britain, France, other countries, etc., was paying for only accepting payment in gold. And obviously we were supplying both sides, so if Germany was paying, we weren't accepting paper marks, we were accepting gold. And it's a big thing for people to realize that all this, the need for sound money is so important because again, things are about to get really ridiculous, and they already are right now. Everyone's in quarantine. But again, this is a case again of, not having sound money has led us to where we are now, where we're just getting handed free helicopter money from the government because shit has hit the fan, literally, and it's a completely... People are saying this is a black swan, and I saw someone mention that this kind of... And I think it's somewhat of a black swan, but again, anyone looking at the data on mid-January was like, hey, this is a big deal. And if everyone had made this a bigger deal then, 2 months ago, this wouldn't be that big of a deal now. We'd actually probably be done with this.
Right. No, I think that's a good point. And even Nassim Taleb has been banging that drum hey, stop talking about black swans, even though that's, kind of how he made his mark, right? He wrote The Black Swan. It's an excellent book. I highly recommend reading or listening to it. But I think his point was this isn't a black swan because there was a decent amount of people who actually saw this coming, and actions could have been taken ahead of time to at least stop or slow down everything that's happening. I mean, you have everything, the entire planet coming to a standstill, and you've seen other countries who are not so averse to wearing masks, who have been wearing masks, and they're kind of getting back to normal much more quickly than the United States will. And I think you make a really good point about just how credit expansion and fiat money has allowed for a lot of things to kind of happen that wouldn't have otherwise been possible. And when I think about, you and I have been discussing for the last year and a half now, that it feels like the fiat money system that everyone's using right now is starting to get close to being on its last legs. This is exactly what it looks like. And when I bring this back to the digital dollar, you almost have to think when it's over, you have to repeg. And I feel like that is a reason why you keep seeing these digital dollar initiatives globally, not just United States Central Bank or other central banks talking about this, because you need something to default to and switch to. You need a new unit of account, and because the money just becomes so worthless. And we're definitely going to talk about this on the last topic for today.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we've brought this map up for the YouTube viewers, and if you don't know what it is, we'll put the link. It's by GIS and data.maps.arc.gis.com. We'll put the actual link in the. It's incredible to see this map. We've watched this map for the past 2 months just expand, and then they started off with the little red dots everywhere, and everyone's like, no big deal, and now we're at 782,000 confirmed cases. The U.S. is leading the charge at 161,807 confirmed, which means we probably have 1 million now, not 161,000. It's pretty ridiculous. And I was seeing this video of LA police. I don't know if you saw it. It's probably going through Twitter right now. Of them dispersing I'm not being. This isn't race related at all, but it was in LA and it was in a black neighborhood, I assume, because their birthday party for this little girl, I think she was 9. was mainly black people. It was, black family, whatever. Lots of people were there, and the LA police was breaking it up, because there's like 50 people there, and it's a 10-person, is like the law right now or whatever. Is like no more groups than 10. As the CDC's been recommending because it will slow the spread. And there was like over 50 people there. And then, obviously it's becoming a big deal. But it's like, again, these are times when people need to realize that, like, there's like, we need to like put aside petty differences with law enforcement. Other stuff, and I get it, like it's sad, like a 9-year-old can't have a birthday party. But in the grand scheme of things, a 9-year-old's fucking birthday party isn't the, it's not a big deal. And I said this before in podcasts, like, in America, we live in this bubble. Like, there are people who grew up, like, you talk about people who grew up in the 90s in Yugoslavia, and they're in the Balkans, and dealing with that, like having just whole cities bombed, whole neighborhoods slaughtered, like, that's so much worse. Those kids didn't have freaking birthdays, and people in America can't stand the bubble being burst. That's just the reality, and that's the reality of most of Western Europe, too. That's why we were so calm and slow to react to this, and that's why no one is wearing face masks. I wore a fucking face mask and goggles and gloves out in public. Yeah, I don't care. Because in a week or two, they're gonna recommend that, and it's already rolling out. Like, they're already talking about it. They're gonna recommend it first to people above 60, and then people who are all younger than 60 are like, wait a second, maybe I should do that too.
Yeah. It's there's just been so much. I hate saying misinformation, but I mean, I guess it's kind of true. You've heard just a lot of back and forth, and even if you take 20 minutes to look at this, you'd find out that using a t-shirt or a scarf is better than nothing. So it's kind of, again, it just going back to, and I think this is a great way to transition to, the attacks on privacy, is that you need to kind of take care of a lot of this stuff for yourself. And I guess we were talking about being prepared a long time ago, and now I guess more people are coming around to that, but it's, no one's going to be there to solve your problems or take care of you, as everyone's kind of starting to realize. And I hope that's a light bulb moment for a lot of people.
Yeah, we'll see. I think a lot of people are starting to wake up to, they talk about like the fourth turning or something. I'm not really into that stuff, but I can see it. I can see what they mean when they talk about like the fourth turning, and things are just changing, and more normies are waking up. Like, I've never heard people say fiat money so many times. Ever, dude.
Right.
Ever.
Same.
Dude, and people are, dude, shit. I was playing a video game the other day, and someone's username was fiat money. I was like, fuck. I saw that.
That blows my mind.
I should have screenshot and sent to you. I was like, what? Yes, I'm in quarantine, so yes, I do play video games every now and then. It's like, but go ahead.
No, yeah. All right. Well, let's jump in on this, because I think the coronavirus has been used as a great cover for
9/11. It's 9/11 all over again. It's literally the same fucking thing.
Right. And it's more draconian measures coming. So we've seen, the CDC set up their coronavirus surveillance and data collection system that was part of the $2 trillion stimulus bill. Well, that really sucks. It's the same map we've been looking at. We've seen this kind of tech. I mean, this is already rolled out in a lot of parts of China already. We've seen it being used in Italy and other countries where they are tracking your movements via your cell phone GPS and coming after you, saying, why'd you leave 200 meters from your home? I've heard other stories in other countries where somebody's cell phone was actually off and the police came to their home and knocked on the door and were like, hey, turn your phone back on, pretty much. Super scary. It's just such a blatant attack on freedom and your privacy that I've noticed a lot of Bitcoiners specifically that I'm pretty disappointed in, who are not pushing back and are kind of saying like, please save me, government. I need you to protect me in this instance. And it's a little disappointing, to be quite honest with you. I've seen marketing footage from a drone in the UK that was, taking footage of a guy on a hike with his dog, not social distancing or whatever, and all this stuff, basically saying, get the fuck back inside. We're going to track you with a drone and maybe haul you off to prison or something. Just a lot of stuff that it people are kind of letting it happen. And I think that's where I start to get more concerned because it's like people just got rolled right over, just as we've talked about numerous times when, the TSA seems like such a big deal now. Everybody forgot about being able to go and wave goodbye to your family members at the airport and stuff like that right at the gate. And now people are, just taking their shoes off, not thinking twice about it as they go through security. And now you roll out a program like this where you're okay with being tracked on a permanent basis for your own protections, which it's being said for your protections, and I'm just not so sure that's the case.
Yeah, and again, I want to look at this like think about the normal person. We like to say normies, but like the average person, this came overnight. This coronavirus is a meme. Like end of January, February, kind of disappeared off. And then the first week of March, if you're American, and I think most of the Western world really, really kicked in. Like it really, the first and second week of March, it really kicked in. All of a sudden, it's real, it's a global pandemic. Like I noticed this with some of my family members who I texted way ahead of time in January and February and talked to them about this and warned them about this, and they laughed at me. And they said, no, it's just China. And their sentiment shift was, it's the end of the world. And it's like, no, this was foreseeable at least 2 months ahead of time, and it was right there screaming you in the face. It was right there. And you just didn't want to look. And now everyone's freaking out, and everyone is just bending over and just praying to government to save them, as you were saying, just from everything. And it's like, we're watching what happened with 9/11, where sentiment changed. America was all safe and this and that, and then all of a sudden you have 2 World Trade Centers, well, 3 World Trade Centers that fall, a Pentagon gets hit, another plane crashes in Pennsylvania, and people are freaking out. Guess what they do? They use that time of crisis and fear to, guess what, pass, more privacy invasive stuff, to, take away your privacy. And that's exactly what's happening here. The perfect example, and I sent this to you a while ago, I sent this video with that guy who wanted to create a fake traffic jam on the street to stop traffic. And he just put a bunch of cell phones in a bucket and pulled around in a wagon and parked it in front of his place or whatever. And, I don't know how many smartphones it was. It could have been like 50. And it created a fake traffic jam for GPS. So that's how, when you see GPS, you see traffic jams. It's because it's just the GPS is just tracking when it your Google Maps, and it's green, yellow, orange, red, whatever. And it's just congestion of cell phones there. There's a shit ton of cell phones on that side of the road. They're like, okay, must be a traffic jam. And that's what's happening with your phones. You're getting tracked. That's just reality. Accept it. And now it's even more clear because they're just we want to track everyone. So what they'll do here is, we have 10 different, let's say the group limit is 10, and the government sees there's 20, phone signatures or whatever showing up. Oh, we're going to send police there, or in this case, probably U.S. military. I don't know, because we're getting to that point where if too many police officers get sick, you're going to see, who's going to replace them? National Guard. Dudes were walking around with M4s and M16s. Get used to it.
Right.
That's who's going to replace them.
Yeah, and that's clearly that's the last thing you want to see happen, and it is just amazing to see how quickly things can change. And I was actually listening to a podcast today who was they were making an interesting argument just about how the internet is such a powerful tool that can be used for both good and evil. In this case, I'm going to use, and it's great because you and I can communicate together. We can talk about these things. We can reach an audience and give them our take on a lot of this stuff, and we can communicate back and forth. And it's never been easier to get access to information and be able to think about these things for yourself. But on the other hand, you can see how quickly sentiment can shift with anything, whether that be with the price of Bitcoin and people getting excited about it, whether that be with people being concerned about coronavirus all of a sudden, to everyone being sheltered in place. And it can be used as such a dangerous tool at the same time. So as liberating as it is, it can also be used for very painful things. One of the other things that I wanted to touch on with this, and you had just brought it up on the screen there, was Bill Gates did a Q&A on Reddit and had revealed plans to use digital certificates, in quotes, to identify those who have been tested for COVID-19. I had wrote down in my notes. I had wrote down in my notes, that's going to be a no for me, dog. But
no, man. Seriously, I mean, we're heading in this scary, technocrat future. If you ever get a chance, there's a group of people, I think it was mainly
the 40s, like the 1940s. And this is what like George Orwell's book is about, like this technocrat future where everything is tracked and there are, it's a perfect utopian world. This brave new world is what it is. But it not like, because the George Orwell, if you've ever seen the movie or read the book, it's just different setting. But it's more of a brave new world setting where like the technocrats wanted, perfect, everything's recorded in society, everyone knows what's going on. Kind of like the Truman Show. You've seen the Truman Show with Jim Carrey.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, exactly like that. But that's a TV show. But that's my point. Like, that's where we're heading. That's scary. But again, look. All we needed to happen was a global pandemic. Like, and I remember watching it happen, and like the sentiment changed a few weeks ago with CNN. They started calling it a global pandemic and all these news channels. But if they would have been forthcoming in January when the data, if they had any half-brained analysts at any other, news places, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, just look at one of those, like look at the data for a few hours, and like, hey, this is what's happening in China, like middle of January, like this is kind of a big deal. It wouldn't have been this all of a sudden global pandemic. It would have been like, this is what's coming. You and I have been watching it for 2 months happen. It's like a slow motion car wreck. It was there. You just had to look. You just gotta have an open mind, is the way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, with a lot of this stuff, you could have started preparing in January, ordered your N95 masks. There would have been no panic. And you might even be able to be still roaming the streets doing your own normal thing right now with very little overall impact except wearing an N95 mask. But it's just unbelievable how quickly things can change. And again, I wanted to harp on this because I think it's important to talk about this, blatant attack on your privacy and freedom and liberty is only possible when there's a monopoly on the production of money. It's plain and simple. If you were directly taxed, meaning you had to write a check or have money taken out of your checking account, direct deposit to pay for these plans, it would just never happen because you would be like, no, fuck you. I don't want you to track me or do all this other stuff. You're taking money right out of my account to pay for this. But if your cash balances can just be inflated away without you really realizing it, you can get a lot of shit can get done without you having to put any thought into what's actually happening. It's like, oh, that stuff happening over there, they're getting the money from somewhere else. It doesn't impact me, but it does impact you because, and this is a great way to transition into the next topic, the cost of goods for you keep going up, whether that's healthcare, whether that's education, your rents, trying to buy a home these days, and your purchasing power is just completely obliterated.
Yeah, that's where, as you said before, and we've talked about it, I think a gazillion times in this podcast at this point, is hyperinflation. And I know I've mentioned like Weimar Republic in the past, and it's just this craziness where, and we've mentioned Venezuela, we've mentioned Zimbabwe. Venezuela has been happening as we speak, and we've seen Argentina too. It's just crazy that there's just, it seems like we live in this world where everything has to be perfect. There's no chance that the economy can go backwards, that anything can, asset prices have to be always chasing new all-time highs. Like, it's insanity. We are pushing things to the limit, to the edge. And, what we get is a catastrophic failure. Excuse me, but that's where we're at right now. Literally, the world economy has literally stopped. I think people still think like this is no big deal. People still think we're just going to rebound back and everything will be fine. And like what we're going to probably see is like an L-shaped recovery, which is just going to be a line down and then just flat. It's going to be like this chart if you're watching on YouTube, except rotate it.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you, and I think this is the best way to segue into this next topic here. I've been trying to do a good job following a lot of the big macro players that we typically talk about, the Raul Pauls, Dan Tapieros, and all those guys, and they've been watching this, like the euro dollar trade and just this demand for dollars absolutely skyrocketing. And that's kind of what happens when you have this complete aversion to, risk off, risk on, where everyone's getting out of inflated assets and looking to go straight to cash or your money-like instrument, which in this case is the US dollar. So you have this cascading event of everyone looking to get into dollars, and there's not enough of them to go around, right? You just had you've had extreme leverage, a ton of credit expansion, and there's not enough dollars to go around. So somebody made a good example of like, what's that game, like musical chairs? There's 23 people playing, and there's only four chairs left, and not everybody's going to get a chair. So now we're seeing trillions being injected into the marketplace to increase that supply of dollars due to all the additional demand. And I forget who it was who I was listening to. They were saying that the hole's too big, right? There's not going to be you won't be able to get enough dollars into the system quickly enough to try to catch this and save it. So the thought process has been, okay, well, if the demand for dollars is going to increase, but we also know that as the supply of money increases, we're going to see inflation, what ultimately happens with the dollar? And from what I've gathered and trying to do my own thoughts about this, you'll have dollar strengthening in the short term as people are fleeing to cash, but then you're going to have dollar weakening after that. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm listening.
Awesome.
Yeah. I can hear you loud and clear, sir. Yeah, no, this is a hell of a time, and you can see here on this. This is just the monthly chart of the dollar, but if I zoom in to the daily, if you're watching, and if you don't get a chance, just look at the U.S. dollar currency index, which is DXY is the ticker. Just Google it, and you can see the movement of the past roughly 40 days has been incredible. From 99 down to 94, back up to like 103, down to 98, which is incredible movement when you look historically on this instrument. Is quite incredible. And as you were saying, it's just a demand for dollars. Everyone wants cash. It's funny because as people say Ray Dalio, like what? It was all of like 5 or 6 weeks.
Cash is trash.
Yeah, cash is trash like 7 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago. And now everyone only wants to be in cash because the asset price volatility is just mind-boggling and just ruining people. I mean, think about it. Like we've literally we haven't seen this volatility since '08, and it's even more incredible than '08 because I don't think I've ever seen so many limit down, limit ups ever in the last 2 weeks, dude.
It's never happened like that before.
No, never ever in history. So people don't know limit down, limit up is basically in futures, like for instance, like S&P futures, ES, mini, whatever. It can only go up 5% in the after like between basically the close of cash session and the open. So between 4 p.m. EST and 9:30 a.m. EST. So between that period, it can go up or down 5%. So if it just goes up 5%, it hits a limit, and it can't bid any higher. But it can be sold lower. So people start bidding lower, and the ask price comes down lower. Sure, and then vice versa on the limit downside. I remember the first night it happened. There just was no bids below like 21 something. I can't remember exact price. There was no bids below there. There's nothing. It's like you're not. But it happened. Like I remember that one week. It was like we went limit down on a Sunday night, and then we went shit the bed Monday. Then went limit up Monday night, and then went limit down the next night. Then the next night we went up a little bit, I think, and then we went limit down again. It was the most ridiculous week ever. It was like 2 weeks ago. It's just mind-boggling volatility.
Yeah, it's just been absolute insanity watching everyone scramble out of their positions, either looking to take profits, lock things in. And then you have, I know Jesse Colombo has been doing a good job of keeping tabs on this. You have the whole buy the dip crowd who is very excited for all the discounted stonk prices. And even I can say, this is just anecdotal. Some of my friends who are millennials or older millennials, maybe even Gen Xers, who have been making comments like, "Oh, I'm buying United Airlines here," or "Oh, I'm buying whatever stock that's gotten beaten up over the last couple weeks," thinking that they're beating the market, right? That they kind of know what's coming. They're assuming a bailout and all this stuff. And I'm kind of using that as my barometer. Well, if you guys think you're smart money, all of a sudden I want to do the opposite of whatever
smart money,
whatever you're thinking. So it is interesting to see how people have taken that buy when there's blood on the streets kind of thing. Like I don't think this is even close to being blood on the streets yet. And the reason I think that is because they're actually excited to buy. You know what I mean? It's like they are the indicator.
Short term, I've been feeling a bounce, and we've bounced a fuck ton since March 23rd, because a part of the reason it was scaring me was on the way down. I kept getting like, especially like mid-March, people started texting me, how, where can I short? Where can I short? And I'm like, motherfucker. Like, I wasn't in any positions, but I was like, there's no way, being short here when a bunch of retail money is texting me about, things to short or what they're looking at to go short on.
Right.
In the short term, we've bounced 20 odd % here. And we may, go a little higher here. I don't know how much higher, but because I'm just could care less. We could go new all-time highs for all I know because we printed so much money at this point. But, SPY 300 is not out of the cards yet. SPY 333, it could still be in the cards because there's a gap there. So I'm not saying it's possible, or I'm not saying it's not impossible, but it could happen. SPY 300 wouldn't shock me. It's not that far away. It's like 2 days of going up like 15%. And the fact is like we've went down, like when you're looking at the Dow Jones, like going down like 13% in a day, like a few times in a week. Don't be surprised if it go 20% up, in a day. That's going to happen. We're seeing incredible volatility right now. And that might be enough to lure in retard money too, as you were saying, like the buy the dip mentality. People, as they see these things, I don't mean to use retard money, but that's what I'm going to use right now because these people, I just like, it's like the people who want to short the market after it falls like 40%. I'm like, come on. I'm like, the time to short was literally like 4 weeks ago. It's not now when we fell 35%. Everything is just oversold on every indicator in the short term. Not saying in the long term, but like short term, you're going to bounce and look where we are. It's going to get interesting here to see what happens. But, obviously I'm more downside bearish. I think this is the beginning of the end than I. So, but I'm just a pessimistic person and you're more optimistic than I am.
Yeah, no, it's more like I just look at this and there's more at play, right? And this is where I'm curious on your take because I know you have interesting thoughts on what you have a couple things to think about. You have asset inflation and deflation, and then you have consumer price inflation and deflation, and we're starting to see interesting turning points in both, right? So we've seen, I want to do a whole another topic on this for a separate episode, but commercial real estate really taking a hit. You've seen equities obviously have gotten smoked over the last couple of weeks, but then there's the dollar, and then there's the inflation in consumer prices, which is what really ends up being an issue when you talk about a recession or a depression, right? In the worst case of scenarios, and that's where we've seen, although I feel like I'm not an expert on this, is that we've historically exported that inflation to other places. And, when the economy slows down and there's no production and you're printing money and handing it to people directly into their checking accounts, what does that do to the cost of goods that are available, meaning your food, right? Your most basic necessities. So what do you think happens over the next, I don't know, foreseeable future? Pick your time frame.
I want to be short term because it's hard to tell, but I think the next, and as you said, this could be the beginning of something really major. Like I don't like people hate charts, and some people are just non-believers in charts. But like, if I use like a long-term S&P chart here and really zoom this guy out, and you like look what's happening on a yearly candlestick, it just doesn't look good, man. Like, this goes back to 1870s. That doesn't sit well to me. That doesn't bode well. What's going on there in that candlestick just doesn't bode well. And, like, I think the next 4 or 5 years could be really interesting. I don't know what the hell it holds for us. It could be this time of excessive hyperinflation and shit really hitting the fan. I mean, think about it right now. The economy is shut down. When the fuck is it going to turn back on? Like, service industry in America is screwed. Think about how many people work in service industry. Like, good friends who I live with. He was a bartender and restaurant manager. Like, his job is dicked. His place is a high capacity place. His job is completely fucked for the foreseen future. Could be another 30 days. Could be another fucking 4 months. I don't know, because our response to this coronavirus was so shitty. The fact that I've had before, there was just complete negligence and incompetence. Because there's no way that intelligence assets in the U.S. didn't have intelligence on what was fucking openly available to my ass on Twitter. like in mid-January. There's no way. They had to know what was going on there. It just had to be negligence or incompetence, and it's a great excuse again. It's kind of like 9/11. If you look into 9/11, 9/11 was not just some black swan event. There were people predicting it was going to fucking happen. Even Condoleezza Rice spoke about it happening, like a plane flying into a building in August of 2001, and then it just happens in September. A plane flies into a building, too. And so, like, my point is, again, this was foreseeable, very foreseeable. And as Nassim Taleb, as you mentioned earlier, said it. Like anyone looking at this, this wasn't just a black swan event. This was happening. It was a slow motion train wreck, as I'd like to say. You could see this coming, and we were looking at this like 2 months ago. It's like, really, this is really actually going to happen. And we kept looking at airplanes still flying everywhere. Like I'm sure I could look right now at live flight radar, flight aware, or whatever, and it's going to be like that. There's probably still a lot of planes. I've heard some planes flying today. Not as many. Definitely not as many, but it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's I just find the whole thing fascinating to yeah.
There's no way you can see the screen. It's just a bunch of freaking aircraft, mainly commercial aircraft, but obviously some are private, flying above the U.S. A lot. There's still international flights I can see coming in and out. Not as many. But the problem is when you have 161,000 confirmed cases in the U.S., likely the number is much higher because there's no way you're ever on top of this virus, especially with a 14-day plus incubation period, as we've seen. It's more than 14 days. My point is, all these aircraft flying around are distributing the virus in the U.S. It's just like ping-ponging around in the U.S. and going to every little town and every city so we can just overrun our whole healthcare system and make this our Chernobyl. That's what's happening right now. It's happening right in front of us.
Yeah, it is. It is amazing to kind of watch all this unfold. I think it's going to be something to definitely look back upon, as time goes on, and you'll be able to point to this. And I'm hoping that a lot of trust has kind of been lost in this example here because it's serious, and regardless if you want to think it's the flu or not, like things got shut down very quickly. It shows that people were not prepared. It shows that people kind of think that, that could never happen here, that kind of mentality. And I hope that it, if anything, is a little bit more of a wake up call. Even if you want to spend, I was telling my wife this, even if you want to spend $100 a year on, refreshing your canned goods or something, in the worst case of scenarios, now at least people will have remembered a very strange time. Even I was talking with my grandmother. She's like, I've never seen anything, like this. It was pretty wild. So
yeah,
it's
my grandparents were born during the Great Depression, 35 birthday, 37 birthday. So they were born during that time, but you got to think they were young, obviously. Things if it would have happened when they were 20 or 15 years old, it would be much more memorable. And now this is something that's probably going to stick with you and I because we're older now. The rest of our lives, remember when fucking shit shut down for X amount of months? And I was going back to what you asked me earlier, I didn't give you a definitive answer on that 5-year. I'll stick with the 5-year timeline. And I'll use this kind of analogy or draw from this. April 1986, Chernobyl happens in Russia, or USSR, Soviet Union. 5 years later, a little over 5 years, December 1991, December 26, 1991, if you want to be specific, is when the Soviet Union collapsed, formally disintegrated. Now, parts were falling apart at that point. I don't like to use this analogy. I don't like to call the downfall of the U.S. empire, but if this really does get as bad as it possibly could because of how shitty our response was initially, this could, as I said, this is our Chernobyl. This becomes a lot worse. This is the wrecking ball, which begins the slow, again, train wreck here. We will see, and I don't know what that means for the U.S. empire, because the U.S. empire is a little different. We have military bases everywhere. I don't think that's going to be able to be sustainable for that much longer, considering the debt situation, considering just the geopolitical situation. And this situation might exacerbate that. And that's what I see, who knows? The U.S. empire, it might be much different in 5 years from now. We'll see.
Right. No, yeah, especially if if inflation, consumer price inflation really picks up and in 5 years from now, we're still talking about this shit and the digital dollar finally comes out because they ended up having to repeg to a new currency. And it wouldn't be the first time, right? We've gone off the gold standard before, 1913, the Federal Reserve. I believe, the US dollar, whatever you want to call that, it's basically defaulted like 3 times already. So, a fourth would definitely not surprise me. And it certainly seems like we're headed in that direction, just because of the amount of stimulus that is being planned for the foreseeable future. There is no limit to, the repo operations every single day, how many hundreds of billions daily that's going to happen. There is no limit to how many times they're going to do a $1,200 stimulus to, citizens and stuff like that. There is no limit. So that's where I like to keep it in the back of my mind, just that we have been talking about this. The solution to that problem ends up being a new unit of account. So I have no doubt that it sounds insane because you and I have grown up using the dollar. That's all that we know we've ever used. That the dollar might look different 5 years from now.
Oh yeah, 100%. And not just the dollar; it could be every fiat currency. It could be everything. The whole monetary system itself could change. I mean, it changed overnight in 1971. In a few years, into dollars for oil. It didn't take long. And again, this is just—it's a weird time, man. It's like nobody alive, maybe a few people, maybe someone who's like 110, 115, has seen something like this. That's it. No one alive. No one experienced the Spanish flu firsthand. Like, we have memories, we have videos about it, because I'm sure there's plenty of people, documentaries that probably came out in the 60s and 70s and so on, the people that were, when they were still alive. But it's incredible. And only we can look back and answer evidence and, not use firsthand. But it's going to be, this is definitely changing. And I think I mentioned it already. I think tourism industry is completely screwed. If you're like, you look at the map of Hawaii right now, on that coronavirus map, and the biggest one is Honolulu, which is the main tourist island, and that has 123 cases versus the Hawaii island, the main one, having 12, the big island. But it's just, and my point was, it's just like seeing where the tourists, like Maui and Honolulu, big tourist area. Hawaii's fucked, dude. Hawaii's industry is tourists. Like, you think about that. Like, if you're a tourist country right now, you're completely destroyed. Like, think about all of Southeast Asia that relies on, Western tourists or people, from, wealthier, Asian nations like China and Japan coming, or South Korea. They're screwed. Like, people are really not thinking about the real big backlash that's coming here. People have jobs, a lot of people not having money, and then that whole thing reverberates through. Because those people now don't have money, aren't spending money, So right. It's just a huge chain reaction. And again, it's a slow motion train wreck. It's taking time to play out. Like, the fact that people aren't just screaming what this is really is, like, this is just the worst thing ever to happen, and just saying what it is and has been for the past few weeks, even though markets have gone up the last few days. It is what it is. It's reality. Like, this is the worst thing. It could be worse than the Great Depression. Considering how levered up everyone is to the hill.
No, yeah, I think you really nailed it there. I think not everything is priced in right now. Obviously, I think things take way longer than it expects, and we kind of saw that with how long it took for people to kind of start thinking about coronavirus. So, things do take a long time. But I think that was a great way to wrap it up. This was episode 80. Thanks for tuning in. Glad you guys are sticking with us. We appreciate all the additional views on YouTube. I'm going to make sure I keep putting that on the Instagram page because all the extra views have been great. So make sure to like and subscribe there. We do appreciate that. Also, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That definitely helps move us up in the charts there. So, and please, share this with any of your friends who think they might be interested or have been asking a little bit more questions about where this money is being printed from out of nowhere, a little bit about Bitcoin. Make sure to share that.
Yeah.
All right. Stay safe out there.
Peace.